when I'm super nervous, I got to do some things to help me loosen up a little bit. So one of the things that my brothers and I like to do is do like a fake laugh Instagram picture. Have you guys seen those? Where everybody's just like, have you guys seen those pictures? So to help me be less nervous, I want everybody to do a fake laugh on the count of 3, just to loosen up. Can you guys do that for me? Fake laugh. Make it as genuine as possible, but as fake as possible at the same time. All right? 1, 2, 3. That's my rich laugh. I feel like the rich laugh in baritone. Well, my name is Tim, and I am super excited to be here. I am the program manager for leadership residency and for the Duper internship program. I actually started in Adventist Health 4 years ago. May this year was 4 years. I started as a leadership resident myself. So leadership residency is like an administrative kind of training program. And back when we had regions, I was in Southern California and I was doing HR. We had Bakersfield in our region. So I traveled to Bakersfield and Glendale and White Memorial and CME, really working on some HR, HP initiatives. That was a time where we brought in Oracle and all these different systems. And so that was a lot of good work, but it was good. And then I was able to transition to actually serve as a senior human performance advisor at Glendale before coming up to Roseville last year to take on the role as a leader for the leadership residency program. So it's really cool because like full circle. I started in as a leadership resident, and now I get to lead the residency program. And I actually have 3 of my leadership residents here that are serving. It's a 2-year program, and they're serving in different markets, and they're here helping out today. So that's a little bit of my journey, but my personal brand is Mr. Meaningful Work. And so last year, when I came up to Roseville, I had some soul searching that I had to do, and I was trying to figure out, why is it that I'm always pulling myself in different directions, right? I have a stable job, but I'm always tinkering in different things, like one project after another, and I was at the sacrifice of time and relationships and things like that. So I was on this journey to figure out what's meaningful for me. And so I took on the moniker of Mr. Meaningful Work from an accountability perspective. I want to be able to be the brand of, and anytime anybody sees that, it's like, hey, what is meaningful work? Hey, I'm trying to figure it out. What is meaningful work to you? And so that was what we started doing. And so it was just more so documenting my personal reflections and understandings of the definitions and applications of meaningful work. And then talking to smart people and figuring out how do they define meaningful work? How do they apply it? And I document that in a podcast that I do called the Late Afternoon Show. This fun kind of late night show style podcast where we talk to CEOs and influencers and tech leaders and different folks and talk about their journey in understanding meaningful work. And I was really glad for the opportunity when Lawson said that we're having this conference and we're talking about an environment of care. We're talking about nurse and resilience because a lot of what I talk about is also the environment of meaningful work and how does that impact resilience? How does that impact engagement, especially for our care providers? So that is what we want to talk about today on this Nurse Resilience Conference. And so I am a storyteller. As you may see, I don't have a lot of energy. So I'm going to try to bring the energy for you guys today. But I'm a storyteller, so I'm going to tell the story. I'm going to bookend this session with 2 stories. But the first story is about 3 knights. Medieval time, right? You have these 3 valiant knights that gallop into the king's court, right? And the king says, "My knights, I have a quest for you." And the knights are like, "Yeah, we love quests. That's what we live for," right? And so he said, over the next 3 years, I want you to prove your valiance. I want to improve your valor, your bravery, your loyalty to the kingdom. And I got 3 bags for you, 3 sacks that you can come back and show and prove your bravery and valor to the kingdom. And so the knights took off to figure out how they can prove their values to the kingdom. And 3 years goes by, and to a lot of fanfare and celebration and parade, the knights come back. Oh, knight number 1 comes back, and he comes into the king's court, and he drops, boom, not 1, but 6 bags full of gold and silver and rubies and diamonds and all the riches. And everybody was like, what? What did you do? And he said, well, I went out. I found a village, and I saw that there's an opportunity here. And he said, I taxed the people just a little bit for our protection, for our service. And I went to another village, and I said, man, this also has another opportunity for a little bit extra tax. And so that's what he did. He went for 3 years finding little villages, protecting them, offering them services, and just increasing their taxes a little bit. And he said, Your Majesty, over the course of 3 years, we have 6 bags full of riches and wealth for the kingdom. Everybody gave him a round of applause. Wow, very impressive. And then the second night came in, and he said, boom, here's my bag. And it was full of plans and trade agreements and blueprints and all these different things. He said, what did you do? He said, well, I went out, and I saw that we had opportunities to build bridges and to make channels and dig rivers and build dams and all this economic things. And so I told the people in the villages, you need to get to work. So they built the bridges, and they dug the rivers, and they built the dams. And now we have trade agreements with all the surrounding nations. And everybody's like, wow, that's amazing. And then the third night came in, and his sack was empty. Everybody's like, dude, did you miss the memo? You need to bring it back full. And he said, well, I tried. I went out, I went to the first village and to do my conquest and figure out what my valiance is. And I came there and I saw that they had no food. So I went out, and I went hunting, and I gathered some food, and I got some vegetables, I got some fruits, I got some bread, I got some seeds, put it in the bag, came back to the village, and helped them get some food. And when they were done, I said, okay, I need to get on my quest. And he went to the next village, and he saw that their buildings were all dilapidated. And so he went and got he chopped down some trees, he got some tar, he got some materials, and he put it in a bag, and he went back to the village, and he helped them build their houses. And he said, okay, I gotta get back on my quest. And he went from village to village, and for the next 3 years, he filled up his bag and gave it to a village, filled up his bag and gave it to a village, filled up his bag and gave it to a village, and he came back and said, my bag is empty. And the king stood up off his throne, and he came down and he said, the point of this adventure was actually to see who is going to take over my kingdom. Who's going to be king after me? Night number 1, you're smart, you're cunning, but you tasked the people, you took advantage of them to get all this wealth. Night number 2, you're smart, you're resourceful, but you worked these people to the bone, to exhaustion. But night number 3, you showed love, you showed compassion, you showed care, you showed service to the people. That is what it's going to take to lead this kingdom. And the moral of this story is that you guys, our nurses, our care providers, you are our knights in shining armor. And we appreciate the work that you guys are doing on the front lines, serving and protecting all of us. And sometimes it might feel like your bag is empty, like your sack is empty, like you have nothing to show, or you're in the midst of the work. And it's not like you're doing it for a prize or for anything like that. But that is where the perspective of meaningful work comes in. Understanding that your work is meaningful, and one of the factors that contribute to meaningfulness and the environment of meaningfulness at work. So very quickly, because I know it's me and then lunch, so I'm not going to try to stand in your way, okay? So we're going to run through this. So the goals here, 3 main goals. At the end of this session, what I would like is that you are able to identify the things that are creating meaningfulness in the job, in the work that you do. Identify the barriers, the things that are inhibiting that experience of meaningfulness in your work. And then also be able to identify the actions that you can take, the conversations that you can have to experience that meaningfulness in your work environment. So let me ask you guys, this is open question time. Who here wants to attempt to define meaningful work? Who wants to try? How would you define meaningful work? There are no wrong answers except 7. That is not an appropriate answer for this. But anything else? How would you define meaningful work?
What fulfills you, what makes you get up, and what makes you get up.
What makes you get up, right? Energizes you, gets you up, gets you going. Anybody else? How would you define meaningful work?
Having empathy and helping someone to move forward.
Empathy. Helping somebody else to move forward. I love that. One more. We'll take one. I should have a fancy poll like Julie, but I don't.
When you do what you love and you love what you do.
Somebody put that on a Hallmark card. Somebody tweet that. Tweet that. Right? When you do what you love and you love what you do, that is meaningful work. So all of these are right. And so over the course of the last year, I've done a lot of reading different publications, different research, talked to a lot of different leaders, and then my own personal reflection, I came up with this definition of meaningful work. Work that is largely driven by intrinsic motivation, is internally fulfilling, and externally impactful, right? So the 3 concepts there: intrinsic motivation. There's a guy named Daniel Pink. He wrote a book called Drive. I would recommend it to anybody, talking about the surprising things that motivate us. And he was talking about that back in the day, right, when times were simpler, we were really only driven by 3 things, very biological things. We gotta eat, we gotta drink, we gotta make more of ourselves. You know what I'm talking about, all right? Those were the 3 drivers back in the day. And as things got a little bit more complex, things got a little bit more nuanced, we started having other drivers, right? Now we were driven by rewards, right? The carrot and the stick to drive performance. And then as things got even more complex and the world got more integrated and things got a lot more complicated, it was not just about carrot and stick. That's like for simple tasks, right? It's not just about biological things. The science showed us that there was a 3rd motivator, was intrinsic motivation. All right, what we're going to talk about are some of the factors that contribute to that intrinsic motivation. But you also have to have factors of what fulfills you, what you're good at, right? The things that energize you as internally fulfilling, and then what is also externally impactful. Things that have net positive impact on the world around you is our definition that we're going to be working with of meaningful work. And why is that important? The research has shown that experiencing meaningfulness in your work environment drives resilience. And that's what we're on here today, right? Resilience. We all had some phenomenal, I had an exercise in here to have you guys define resilience. You guys did a phenomenal job setting really great definitions of resilience, right? Your ability to bounce back, right? How productive, how successful can you be in the face of challenges, right? How can you continue to do the work that you do even if there's chaos around you, right? So you build elements of resilience, and then engagement, right? We're all used to the engagement survey that we have every year that helps you figure out, how are you feeling about your work and your work environment, right? Are you what's the word? Are you invested? Are you enthusiastic? Are you involved in the work environment? Meaningfulness and experiencing meaningfulness at work drive these things, and both of these things combined help to reduce burnout, help to increase patient outcomes. And we'll see some of the work that they're talked about in, so our Joint Commission, we all know the Joint Commission, they come and survey us all the time, and the American Nursing Association put some factors together. So you have the top 5 factors, these leader empowering behaviors that help drive resilience. The top 5 factors that contribute to increased engagement from Press Ganey is where they put this. And you'll see that the common theme here is the meaningfulness at work, right? So I'm just kind of painting the picture of why are we focusing on meaningful work and meaningfulness in your work environment. And if nothing else, the simplest thing is that understanding meaningfulness at work, understanding the meaningfulness in the job or the area that you're in, it makes you malleable, right? Think of a rubber band. A rubber band is able to stretch, but it's able to come back to its form. It's able to hold things together. When there's a lot of things going on, it doesn't necessarily, you have to really pull it out a long way before it breaks, right? As opposed to a zip tie, which is very rigid. It's very strong, but it'll only go one way. It just gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, right? The only way that you make a zip tie bigger is you break it, you cut it, right? So meaningful work makes you malleable, makes you resilient, makes you more engaged. So story time again. So somebody shared a really great story earlier about work out in the field. I want somebody else to give me a story about your best shift. The best shift. It could have happened last week. It could have happened last year, but it was so memorable. Like, oh, this was like my most favorite shift. We talked about it at dinner time. We talked about it at the parties. Anybody have a story about their best shift at work? Who wants to share? Who can remember? Are you telling me that nobody has ever experienced a phenomenal shift?
How do I say this? Best birthday gift I ever got was one of my best shifts. I work in an emergency room. I get a call from a couple of paramedics saying, can you go across the street and help with the code? Literally in our parking lot. So I go across the street. It's one of my mentors who's in cardiac arrest. And that sounds like, well, that's a heck of a birthday gift. We were able to get him back. Went back to work against medical advice in 7 days. He's one of our surgeons where I work. Best shift ever. Haven't had anything even close.
Wow. So, tell me, why was that such an amazing shift for you?
It's not just the save. It was the fact that I drove 2 new grad nurses with me across the street. And they got super excited because they got in the back of an ambulance. They went less than a block, but they were in the back of an ambulance. They were talking about it. They're still talking about it, which made it really great.
That's awesome. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank you for that story. So when you think about that, right, there was a life saved. That's amazing. That's awesome. And not just any life, a life of a mentor, somebody that's close to you. But at the same time, you're able to impact the life of other people. You had 2 students that were able to see all of that and experience and lights and like, well, we don't stop at traffic lights. Yeah, it's awesome. But that is what made that experience amazing and meaningful. But when you think about something like that, there were some things that were in your control. When you think about the environment, the things that were in your control and things that were out of your control, right? Can you give me a couple of examples in that story? What were some of the things that were out of your control? Location, right? It was in the middle of the parking lot, right? What else? Full arrest. You don't get to pick the sick, you don't get to pick the ailments. Like, it is what it is. It happens where it happens, right? And so understanding the things that are outside of our control, understanding the things that are in our control, we're going to be talking about that and how they work together to experience meaningfulness, at work. And so what we're going to spend the most time with today is, now, this is still in development, so don't get too caught up in this design, but the point here is the 4 P's here, which are permission, perfection, people, and purpose. Those are constant, those are consistent. The 2 on the side, the idea is that you can approach meaningfulness at work from 2 different directions, or there's 2 different approaches to that. And we'll talk about those in a little bit, but the main things that you want to focus on when trying to gauge what type of meaningfulness you can derive from a situation or from your work are permission, perfection, people, and purpose. The colors really don't matter. We're still trying to get good imagery on that, but we're going to jump right into it. All right, so when we say meaningful work, this is one of the ways you can approach meaningfulness at work is as a destination. When you think of a destination, you think of something that is, there's an end, right? We have arrived somewhere. We're at a destination. So this is talking about meaningful work in your role, in your job, that you're able to find permission or perfection or the people or purpose in the job. Or maybe you say, hey, I feel like I will experience meaningful work in that role or in the next role. So it's very destination, job, and role specific. And that's what we're talking about today is more the role specific approach to meaningful work. Another way that some folks look at it is more directional, right? It's not necessarily tied to a job or a role. It's just your general approach to life. That you're trying to find meaningfulness in everything that you do, right? You're trying to find the people to help bring that meaningfulness. You're trying to find the purpose for that. So some folks can approach it from a directional standpoint, not necessarily tied to a job or a role. Some folks are more geared, and there's a mixture of both. You can have a mixture of both of those. But we're going to go into the different factors here. So permission. This is talking about authority, ownership, and autonomy. Let me show you my squad real quick. So this is my gang. That's Joshua, that's my 5-year-old boy. And those are my twin girls. I used to have a head full of hair. I used to have dreadlocks. And then I got married and had kids and the hair was like, peace. All right, so that's Joy and John. This is my squad. And how many of you have kids? How many folks have kids here? All right. These guys are asking for permission, or they should be, asking for permission all the time. Daddy, can I wear my ballerina shoes to the park? Daddy, do I have to wear underwear today? Daddy, do it. It's like permission all the time. And the reason that kids ask us for permission is because at a certain stage, they don't have autonomy over their time, right? They don't have ownership. They don't own anything. Like, I bought it all. It's my stuff. These shoes, these are mine. I bought them, right? And so that's why they have to come to us for permission. My residents here, they ask me, can I expense this? Can I expense this? Can I expense this? Why? It's because they don't own the budget. I own the budget. And so I have to give them permission, to be able to do that. So when you have ownership, when you have authority over and an autonomy on the type of work you do, where you do your work, with whom you do your work, the research shows that contributes very significantly to experiencing meaningfulness at work. If you think about your roles right now, so if you are a care provider, if you're a nurse or some type of care provider, what are the things that you have authority, ownership, and autonomy over? Just shout them out. What are some of the things you get to decide where you work, your schedule? What are the things that you have authority, ownership, or autonomy over? Your attitude, how you come in, how you present yourself, your attitude. What else?
Well, for me, it's what my day goals at, because every moment changes, and most of ours does. So, if you have some level of control over how I respond to those crises.
Yeah. How you respond to those crises, right? Anybody else? One more. Integrity. Tell me what you mean by that. Yeah. And doing the right thing. Like, to me, when I hear integrity, it's like doing the right thing even when nobody is watching, right? You know the right thing to do, and you don't let it skew or sway based on the situation. You have that integrity, it's sure. And so thinking about the things that you do have control, you do have autonomy over, if it's, something as little as like, hey, I would like, my weekends, or I like this particular group of people and I want to be able to work with this particular group of people, or I like this particular leader, I want to be able to have more face time with this particular person. Identifying those things in those areas where you can have ownership, and even if it's not in the workplace, and you can find other areas where you can exercise that strength of permission. It makes it easier, even if you're in an environment that doesn't necessarily have it, you can bring that over and still get the benefits of that as well. And so hopefully this video works. So this is one of my friends, her name is Monique. She's been a nurse for about 10 years, and she just talks a little bit about how she applies permission in the workplace. Let's see if this works. Please work.
Hi, my name is Monique Johnson, and I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 9 years now. I'm predominantly emergency room, and now I also do recovery room for surgical. And I'm at work, but I did want to just come through and just talk about pretty much how permission impacts me in my work on a day-to-day. I know for one, autonomy is really big, especially when working in the ER, because having the ability to, especially as a nurse, you're at the bedside a lot, and so seeing or feeling like something is wrong and then having the autonomy and the ability to do it is absolutely wonderful. And I think that really helps in the patient's care, and I think that the doctors love it because they're not bothered as much, and I think it makes the teamwork a lot better when you have that autonomy because you feel like everyone is looking out for the patient and that, this person will do what's right for the patient or bring it to your attention. It really helps with the overall connection of everyone. Helps with the overall connection of the doctors, the rest of the staff, as well as the patient, because the patient feels like, hey, you're rooting for me. You're being like a intercessor for me. You're looking out for what's best for me. So it really helps with just the engagement and everything like that because they always feel like, we have their back for that reason. Of course, resilience is really huge because we're constantly having to, bounce back from different scenarios and different opportunities that present itself.
So that's just one example of how you can find opportunities for permission within your work. So the next thing is perfection. Does anybody here identify as a perfectionist? Right? You try, right? So how would you, since you were brave enough to identify, how would you define perfectionism or perfectionist? What does that look like for you?
Well, I'm an IC user, so that might explain something. But for me, it's sometimes more of a hindrance that I think of it. I'm too focused on making things perfect and right in the right order rather than sometimes moving on to the next task. So it helps drive me to work hard, but sometimes it makes me focus on the wrong thing.
That is exactly right. And I actually have a definition here that I'll just read. So people who are perfectionists typically believe that nothing they do is worthwhile unless it's perfect. As opposed to being proud of their progress, learning, and hard work, they might constantly compare their work to the work of others or fixate on achieving a flawless output. And when we're talking about perfection here, we are talking about the pursuit of excellence and development, right? That perfection is not something that you get to and you're like, I'm perfect. I don't need to do anything else. No, you're always pursuing excellence, always trying to grow and to develop. And so when we put perfection here, is just that career growth. What are the skill sets? What are the capabilities that you want to develop? And does the organization provide the opportunities to get better and to strive for that? And then are you getting the recognition for that progress, right? As you're making moves towards getting better, are you getting recognized in a way that's meaningful for you, right? Not everybody wants a big public hoopla. Some folks might you guys have heard of love language, right? Right? There's different ways that folks respond to love and communication. It's the same way for recognition. Some folks might just want to spend time. It's like, hey, my manager just having a one-on-one and sharing, hey, I really appreciate the work that you did on so-and-so. That's a recognition of progress, right? It might be a big, I like public things, and somebody say, hey, nurse so-and-so was able to achieve this certification, and this puts them on the next step, on their growth plan. and they appreciate that. But having an environment that supports growth, that supports development, that supports moving towards excellence is what we are talking about here. And so what I want you guys to do is, in a very short time, I just want you guys to just turn to your neighbor, whoever you're sitting with. If you don't have a neighbor, then I think we got one-on-one over here or one-on-one over here, and just talk about one thing, one skill set, one competency, one thing that you want to grow and develop in, and then talk about if the opportunity to do that exists in your current workforce or your current environment. So just turn to your neighbor and say, hey, I want to grow in public speaking, or I want to grow in, whatever it is, the thing that you want to develop in. Talk to yourselves, and then we'll come back in about 2 minutes. All right, we'll give it about 30 more seconds. All right. All right. Does anybody want to share what their partner wants to develop in? Oh. Who remembers? All right, let's come down here. What your partner wants to develop in, and if the environment exists for that growth.
So my partner wants to grow in, she's a nurse manager in the emergency department, and she wants to grow in coaching her employees to be a little more compassionate and to maybe, they're experiencing a lot of burnout right now, so.
Do you feel like the environment exists where you can grow and develop in that skill set? Yes, that's awesome. Let's give them a hand for sharing. All right, so growing the skill set of coaching, and just shameless plug, myself and Julie, we work in leadership, learning and organizational development, and so coaching and these are part of the leadership development skills that we work on and we provide for our leaders across the organization. So the fact that that is a need and that is a desire from our leaders just shows that we're creating the right curriculum that will be rolled out to the organization. So close to last one is people. How many folks here got their current job through a recommendation, a friend, a connection, or something? Raise your hand if you got your job. Raise your hand if you got your job, just I applied cold and got it. All right, now think about your next job. Do you feel like you'd be able to get your next job by applying cold and just getting it, or you would need relationships? Raise your hand if you feel like you would need relationships for your next job. All right, so more hands came up on the second one, and so relationships are huge. People, the people that you surround yourself with, the mentors that you have, the peers that you have, the folks that you're able to build trust with is very important, and when that is lacking, it makes an already stressful, an already tasking job even harder. right? If you're not able to get along with your coworkers, if you're not able to connect with your leaders, if you're not able to find folks that are on the similar wavelength, that are pursuing excellence and wanting to have the same quality outcomes and are not cutting corners, right? You want to make sure that you are surrounded with folks that support and empower you. So that people aspect and identifying how you can have folks trust you, right? So any part building a relationship is a two-way street, right? Folks have to be able to trust you while you're also having to be able to trust other folks. And this is just a very simple representation of the elements that contribute to trust, right? What are the things, am I bringing my true and authentic self to the workplace, right? Am I able to be my full self, or are the people around me able to be their full selves? How many folks here love fake people? Raise your hand super high. No? Right? We don't like that fakeness. So we want to be able to bring our true and authentic selves. We want to be able to have an environment that allows for you to bring your true and authentic self. Empathy, right? Knowing that you can put yourself, am I able to put myself in somebody else's shoes? I may not agree, but I can understand from their perspective. And do other people do others do that for me? And then logic, you just make the right decision, you make good decisions, and there's evidence, there's demonstration of things going well, things going right, that you can see that this is somebody that we can trust. So as you're thinking about how to build relationships, how to connect with the right people, so you don't feel like Jackie brought up earlier that you are isolated in a crowd of people, right? That's like the weirdest feeling, to be amongst folks and still feel alone. So building trust and being able to take that quick assessment of where you are and where you might have a wobble, right? So you look at these three elements, and some folks have a wobble in one of those areas, and that's where trust starts to break down. So you can take an assessment for yourself and take an assessment for other folks. And so finally, the last thing is purpose. Being in an environment that has purpose, or knowing your own purpose. Does anybody here feel like I was called to be a nurse? Like, this is my purpose. We got a few folks, right? Does anybody not know their purpose? I'm raising my hand because I'm still figuring it out, right? And that's okay. That's okay, right? There is a very interesting statistic in this book, Drive, and I'll read a little excerpt from it. But it showed that when folks turn 60, something happens, that they start to take an assessment of their lives, right? It's kind of like at a retirement age, and so you're trying to take an assessment. A lot of times folks are starting to transition into retirement, and so folks are now taking stock of like, what did I do for the last 60 years or the last 40 working years? Was it meaningful? Did I do anything that leaves a legacy? And so what folks are starting to do is that they're going to spend the next 5, 10, 15 years that they still have to do purpose work, right? There's purpose income or purpose professions that folks start getting into after that age. The crazy statistic is that there are about 78, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the United States alone has about 78 million boomers, which means that on average, every year, more than 4 million Americans hit this soul-searching, life-pondering birthday. That's more than 11,000 people each day, more than 450 people every hour. In other words, in America alone, 100 boomers turn 60 every 13 minutes. Every 13 minutes, 100 people are thinking about their purpose. For every hour, for every day, for every year, at least until 2024, right? So you think about that purpose is top of mind for these folks that are coming into it. When you think about millennials, you think about Gen Z and the next wave of workforce that are what we call purpose natives, right? They come into it, and because they have so much access to what's going on across the world all the time, They're always trying to align themselves with brands. I'm saying they, like I'm not one of them. We're always trying to align ourselves with brands that have some type of social mission or environmental consciousness or what have you, because we want to know that the organizations and the people that we're working with have some type of purpose. So if you have this undercurrent of folks that are thinking about purpose and this general, you know that it's important, right? And for me, one of the easiest ways to be able to find out what a purpose or what my purpose is, you guys may have seen this Ikigai, that shows the different sections of what you love, what the world needs, what you're paid for by way of your job, and what you're good at, what your strength is. You find that sweet spot to figure out, yes, I'm living a life of purpose, or the organization that I'm in is a purpose-driven organization, and that contributes to experiencing meaningfulness at work. And so what we have here is a quick little assessment. And if I can get Marcy or Lexi, you guys come help me pass these out before we go to lunchtime. And so this is just for yourself. As we've gone through this and talking about permission, we talked about perfection, we talked about purpose and people. I just want you to take just a personal, this is just for you, and see, based on the role that you're in, 5 being there is strong evidence of this element in my role, 1 being that there is no evidence of this in my role. And what this does for you is this gives you a quick view in where you stand from a meaningful work perspective and what you can do, you can model, what you can influence to get more permission, or to get around the right people, or to be able to pursue perfection and development and growth and mastery in a certain skill set. And so if you're low in a certain area, you know that we have some opportunities to grow in that area. If you're high in a certain area, if anybody's able to score 5s all the way across, which is awesome, what that means is that you then are able to then mentor and counsel others and say, hey, this is what I did to be able to experience this level of meaningfulness in my work, right? I was able to have this conversation, I was able to work with this person and bring this out to be able to experience this maximum level of meaningfulness in my work. And if you're low, again, those are opportunities to grow and develop. So I want to wrap it up with a story that I found very interesting in my personal Bible readings, my personal devotions that I have, that I felt was just so perfect and so applicable to our group here. So I usually listen to the Bible app while I'm brushing my teeth. And so I'm like, it's brushing and I'm hearing the Bible app. And the story that's happening is that John, Jesus has died, he's risen back up, but the disciples are still kind of mopey, right? He revealed himself a couple times, but they're still kind of down. And so Peter and the disciples just kind of hanging out one night, and they're just in a very glum and just, oh, this is so sad. And Peter was like, you know what? Forget this. I'm going fishing. Right? So everybody was like, you know what? Yeah, let's go fishing. Mind you, they haven't been fishing for about 3.5 years, right? So they go out on the boat, they go at night, and they're fishing. They're fishing all night, catch nothing. Morning breaks, they're about to reel it in, and they hear a voice on the beach. It says, hey, yo, kids, you guys got any food? And they're like, no. And he was like, yo, cast your net on the other side. I'm like, okay. So they cast their net on the other side. Boom! All of the fishes appear. And all the fishes come in their net, and they automatically realize, that's Jesus. Peter jumps out of the boat, swims to shore. They have a nice little fish fry, right? But the thing that caught me was they said they caught so many fish, about 150-something fish, but their nets did not break. And I was just buzzing. Their nets did not break. Why is that tickling my for some reason? So I rinsed my mouth, put away, and went and found my Bible somewhere, and I'm just like flipping through, and I found it in Luke. In Luke, at the beginning of the ministry, when Jesus was just about to go out, he finds Peter on the shore. He'd been fishing all night. He had caught nothing. Jesus hops in his boat and says, hey, throw your net into the deep. And Peter's like, I've been fishing all night. You don't even know how to fish. Why are you telling me all these things? All right? So just throw your net out in the deep, man. So he throws it in the deep, and a bunch of fish come up, but their nets start breaking. Their nets start breaking. They have to have other people come and help them grab their nets. And I was thinking about that. At the beginning of the ministry, their nets were breaking with a bunch of fish. At the end, their nets were not breaking with a bunch of fish. Why is it so interesting? And what I found is that spending time with Jesus, when they were spending time with him, when he showed them how to have permission and authority, he showed them his authority. He showed them his autonomy. He showed them that, hey, I'm not going to let you guys just be catching fish anymore. You're going to be fishing for men. And he showed them what they can have control over. He showed them how they can get better. He showed them how to interpret the scriptures. He showed them how to heal and how to pray and all these things. So they were able to develop a skill set and pursue perfection. He was able to show them the relationships that he built, right? He was connecting with different types of people, different relationships. His 12 people, the other folks that came around him, they showed him the relationships and his ultimate purpose, what he was coming here to do. They had spent 3.5 years, and what had happened is that they had built up their resilience. They had built up their strength. They were able to handle that level of load because of the time that they were able to spend. And so what I want to share with you guys today, that sometimes you guys might feel like your nets are breaking, that you have so much that's going on, so much that's demanded of you, but just understand that if you guys are focused on the purpose, or focused on the permission, focused on these things, at the end of the day, even though a lot is demanded of you, your nets are not going to be able to break. You're going to be able to sustain, you're going to feed, you're going to be able to do all the things that you are put on this earth to do. And that is how we break for lunch.
That was a perfect segue, and the lunch has arrived. So time is now 11:46. So we'll take an hour lunch, and we'll come back at 12:46.
Or just percent?
Yeah.